girl today who was 94 and had been driving until about 6 months ago, so she had a good life. I was not frying chicken because I don't even know how to fry chicken when she called. And a week ago had pulled out my notes. I came last year and spoke to the class, and fortunately had made some notes, and miracle of all miracles, found the notes. Thank you. Found the notes a week ago, and was going to look at the notes before the class, but I forgot I was doing this, so I haven't looked at the notes except at the red lights on the way over. So you'll have to just hang with me. And one thing I have learned with a child with special needs is how to go to plan B, C, D, E, F, and on down the road. So my plan A's are not ever, usually are not carried through. So my name is Betsy Gary. I'm originally from Tuscaloosa. I've lived here all my life. My son Walt is 30 years old. And Amy and John had asked me to speak about the role of the teacher and how the teacher can help the parents. Is that what we're speaking on tonight? Good, good. And so I'll give you a little history of Walt, and because he's 30, we were kind of, not that we wanted to be or chose to be, but we were kind of in the beginning of a lot of things, and I'll tell you as we go, because now that he's 30 years ago, for example, the special ed classes at the elementary school where he went to Verner didn't even eat lunch with regular kids. So we did not choose this role to forge a lot of paths, but we just ended up in this role, and we were very blessed to be able to have the school system and the teachers help us with Walt. The role, my idea of the role of the teacher, of course, the main thing to me is for them to be sure and help the student be the best that they can be. Now, a lot of times the parent might have one idea of what that is, but it's always important, and sometimes it might take the parent a little while to see what might be best for the child, but I think that's the main role of the teacher, so that the child can become all that they should. You hear a lot about people giving credit to a teacher, that they help them on their path, and they help put them in the right, or gave them an interest in English, or made them realize, well, I can do math. I'm pretty good at that. And then they end up being an accountant. Well, a child with special needs can do so much to encourage other people and to be a benefit to our society. And with the right teachers, all of that can be brought out in the child with special needs as well as a child without special needs. I think we all have special needs. I mean, we all have issues. We all have things we need to work on. None of us are perfect, and it's just important as a teacher to be an encourager and to help your students be the best that they can be. My son was, in 1978, my daughter was born, and we're from a middle-class family. We had the white picket fence, and everything was just great. And so I thought my world was just wonderful. And then in 1983, Walt was born with Down syndrome. I worked actually at the university in Rose Administration. And at the time, the RISE program was within a rock's throw of where I was working, and I had never heard of it. It was not in the nice new building where it is now. It was just in this kind of dumpy place over, what was the name? I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, and so somebody came to the hospital, and I've been here all my life, grew up, was working, real close to the building, and had never heard of the RISE program. Somebody came and told us about RISE. They were very encouraging about how we could start him. He was born with heart issues, and actually has had 4 open heart surgeries. But he started the RISE program at 8 weeks. There we found a group of parents that were supportive, but mainly found a group of teachers that were very supportive, that knew about Down syndrome. We knew nothing about Down syndrome. So they were able to help us, educate us, I threw the books away because they were not positive, they were very discouraging. And you can't ever say that somebody is not going to do something. You know, you always need to think positive. I mean, there are things that my daughter doesn't do, but I never, with Walt or my daughter, set out and said, well, they'll never be able to do that, they'll never be able to do that. And with the encouragement of the teachers, then we were able to see some progress with Walt when he was, you know, when he was young at Rise. At that time, Rise only went to age 3, and when he was 2, his teacher suggested that we put him in a regular preschool classroom over at First Presbyterian Church. At the time, Rise did not have reverse mainstreaming. How many of you have been to the Rise program and seen how now they have kids, typical kids, and then they have the kids with special needs? Back then, they did not have the reverse mainstreaming. So the teacher suggested that Walt go to the regular 2-year-old classroom. Well, we saw a huge difference in his speech immediately when he was around the talkative 2-year-olds. He learned some good words and he learned some bad words. And it was pretty funny, but it was immediate, within a couple of weeks, how his speech picked up. At that time, Rise only went to age 3, and now they go till they're 5. So at 2 and 3, we'd go part-time, a few days to First Pres and a few days to Rise. So then after he graduated at age 3, he went 4, 5, and 6 to First Pres. Now, he was the first Down syndrome kid to be mainstreamed at First Presbyterian Preschool. So there were some behavior issues. He'd been over at Rise, been spoiled rotten at Rise, and so we had to work through all that. The teachers were very supportive, very helpful. And he learned a lot from being in those classrooms, and of course, that typical kids always learn a great deal from kids with special needs, which is why Rise later started the reverse mainstreaming, because both sets of kids learn from each other. Walt was, hold on, let me find my place. So anyway, so that was the best thing for Walt, to put him in with the 2-year-olds, the talkative 2-year-olds. Amy had asked me last year, she said, be sure and tell positive and negative stories about your experiences with teachers. And I was thinking about that again the other day, I really can't think of it. I mean, I can't think of any negative stories. Maybe I blotted it out, but I think we came in at a time when the teachers and the administrators were ready to make some changes in special ed, and so they were willing to work with us. And we can be, I mean, you know, we're not people that sit back and don't say anything. So, you know, we were forging ahead too. So it just worked. It was the time for it to work. When Walt was 6 years old, we were zoned for Verner Elementary School. Now, I went over to observe, and the special ed kids had no association with the regular ed kids. They didn't go to PE with them, they didn't eat lunch with them, they didn't do anything with them. This really nice special ed teacher, Pat Varner, was ready to make some changes. And so she and I worked together, and Walt started in kindergarten at age 6, and he was mainstreamed a lot of the day in the regular classroom. He was pulled out some for special ed, and all his life he was pulled out at times. But every year I would go and observe and see and talk to the teachers the year before we would go to the next, level, and just see what would be best for Walt. Whatever's best for Walt. Not best for me, but what's best for Walt. And so he was given, there was an aide that worked with him and some of the other kids in the special ed class. But it was important, I felt it was important for him to be pulled out at certain times, like for the reading or the math, to have more one-on-one. I know now they do a lot of inclusion, not much of the other, but it worked, it benefited Walt. He was with the regular class, a great deal. And then he had the special one-on-one work with the teachers. After the first IEP, I cried for 5 hours. My eyes were like swollen out like this. My husband came on and said, "What in the world has happened to you?" He was having some behavior problems because he had always been, you know, kind of, even at first preds, you know, he'd been kind of taken care of. And so now that he was in the regular classroom, he wasn't getting his way. He wasn't, you know, big man on the block. And so he had to learn to adjust. The teacher was the kindergarten teacher was wonderful, and she helped us and worked with us. But I mean, it was like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. I mean, you know, she kept saying, "We're going to work it, we're going to work it." She was an encourager for that reason. About that time, I went to a seminar about kids with special needs. And one of the main things they talked about was the importance of educating everybody that deals with your child. The principal, the teachers, even the students. And so I made it a point then to do that. And I would go each year and talk to the students. I remember going to talk to the kindergarten class and talked about that Walt was born with special needs, and that he was born, his eyes, he wears glasses, and he had his heart issue, you know, but that was fixed. And he was, you know, his heart, he had to have open heart, and he was born with Down syndrome, that he could learn, but it'd just be a little slower. Well, from that point on, it was funny because a lot of the kids thought that if you had open heart, you also had Down syndrome. So we had to kind of correct that, but each year I would just make it a little bit, you know, not quite as simple as the year before so that they could understand it. The teachers were handpicked each year by the special ed teacher. Of course, the principal, which is ironical, the principal was I taught school 1 year when I got out of college, and then decided that wasn't my calling, and he was my principal. So I knew him, had a relationship with him. Had no clue that I would have a child with special needs and come back full circle to work with him again and to use my education in the College of Education to help my son as we mainstreamed him through the school system. We went to West Lawn. It was different back then. You went through the 5th grade, then you went to West Lawn for 1 year, and then you went to, and we were having horrible issues with him at West Lawn because he had really been spoiled over at Verner. And he thought, if I'm real bad, I'll go back to Verner. And so I had to come up with all these things, like we packed up the drums when he had a bad day, whatever it was important to him. 2 times, a friend of mine took the dog, the little Shih Tzu. We packed up the Shih Tzu. And then I ran into Coach Stallings one day, and I said, he was a friend of my father, I said, "Walt's having a hard time at school. If I bribe him, could I bring him to practice on Thursdays?" And he said, "Sure, come on." Well, we've been going for 18 years on Thursdays. And that kind of got Walt's attention because he was already a football fan at that age. And so he would try really hard to have a good week so that he could go to football practice. But whatever it was, we packed up movies and put them in the attic. I mean, whatever it was, we were using whatever we could to get his attention. So then in the 7th grade, we went to TMS, and then we went over to Eastwood. And so each year, I'm going and seeing, and I'm putting him in some regular classes because he has an aide with him, and then he's in some special ed classes. Walt and my daughter both they put a lot of pressure on themselves to do well in school. So Walt wanted to make good grades. That was just, I think you're born with that. And so his grades met the criteria, and he was inducted into the Honor Society at Eastwood in the 8th grade. Because his grades in the regular classes and in the special ed classes, met the criteria for that. The teachers were very, very helpful, very encouraging to us. Then we went to West, for 9th and 10th. And things were getting a little stickier there as Walt got older. Of course, my goal was that Walt would graduate with his class, get the diploma, everything would be great. At that point, I saw that Walt was not going to probably stay on that track. I had a teacher in the 9th grade suggest that I go look at the transition class that was taught over at TCT, Tuscaloosa Center for Technology. I went over there. It just didn't seem to be where I wanted Walt. I still had these goals of this graduation from, high school, and I felt like that was not the best thing for him. The next year, they suggested it again, and we moved him. After the 10th grade, we moved him to the Tuscaloosa Center for Technology for 11th and 12th. So it wasn't what I wanted, but it was what was best for Walt. And he was in that class for, I don't know, a year or so, and then 2 professors came to college from 2 different colleges with and had been involved with a similar program to Crossing Points. And they approached Walt's teacher, and that was the beginning of Crossing Points. So we were in the first class for Crossing Points also. So we had a lot of firsts, like we were the first at the preschool. We were the first to be mainstreamed at Berner School. The first child down syndrome to even go to Berner School. And then at the next school and the next school. And so we were fortunate enough to be in the first class of Crossing Points. And so I have seen Crossing Points grow unbelievably because that first year we were like begging people on this campus to take our kids for job sites. And now they're calling, asking for the kids because, they love to work, they do great. Walt was fortunate enough that one of his placements had been at the bookstore, the Soup Store. And I don't know if any of you have seen him in there, but he works back in the textbook section. And he's been there for 9 years. So next summer, he'll be tenured. 10 years, that's hard to believe. But that job is a result of Crossing Points. And of course the teachers, when we hit campus, it was just like when I saw him at age 2, go into a class with talkative 2-year-olds and saw such a difference in him. When they hit this campus, all we did was pick up the exact same class that had been at TCT and put them right here in this classroom. But they were on campus. And so, they were like cool. They felt like they were college students. Their self-esteem, just everything about them you could see within a few days. They matured so much, and it was just a neat thing to see. A lot of the programs are not located. The kids aren't on campus all day like they are here. They're dropped off, and they have some job sites on the college campuses. But this program is so unique because they are actually on campus during the day, treated like college students. Have the ACT card, access to the rec center. The whole thing. Let's see what I have not said. I've said a lot. So if you had told me when we started kindergarten, and I cried for 5 hours after the IEP, that Walt would 9 years later be working over here at the soup store, I would have told you that you were absolutely crazy. He will not ever be working anywhere. It was just one of those things where you just had to, but with the encouragement of the teachers and trying different things to make it work. So I've got a list of things that I think are important about how a teacher can help a parent. And parents they'll all be different. Some will think their child is perfect. I've never thought either one of mine were perfect. Some will they will not like your suggestions, and you might have to word it in a different way. But number one is to be an encourager, to encourage the student and encourage the parent as they're trying, especially with a child with special needs. But this applies to any student. Some of you might teach classes that don't have kids with special needs in it, and it'll also apply when you have children of your own someday. To be very honest, to tell exactly what's going on and what you see are the issues and what you think needs to be done to help the child. But the main thing to keep in mind, what is best for the child. Be educated on special needs. There are some different types, as you know, types of special needs, and if you get a child in your class that has some rare something, you need to research that, find out about that child, but don't ever stereotype a child. Don't ever say that a child, if this says that this child can't do this, well then we're not going to ever try that. Because, you know, you never know what a child will be able to do and what they cannot do. Encourage parent involvement, but not hanging around all day, every day at the school, which some parents with special needs have a hard time with, especially at first. Communicate with the parents, with meetings, that's really important, to keep them current on what's going on. Send progress reports home. The parents are fighting for their kids, and they will fight for you and your needs. There were many times when I would end up going to get something for the classroom. A lot of times a parent can get something done quicker than a teacher. And if the teachers know that the parents are fighting for them and they're fighting, if everybody's fighting for the same reason, the same thing as to what's best for the child, then, you know, it just works beautifully. Treat all kids the same, even if it has special needs. Don't talk down to the child. Don't think the child cannot make a difference in the world, because they certainly can. They touch a lot of, all of us touch a lot of lives and encourage people. If it's too okay, this is really important, because we know this is wrong. If you make it too easy on them, then they'll take advantage of it. I remember when Walt had an aide one time that was out sick, and there was a sub for the aide, and he was in the, I think he was in the 8th grade. I went over there for some reason, and Walt had the sub carrying his books down the hall. And I said, what in the world? And she said, well, he said that the aide carries his books all day. And I said, no, the aide is not carrying his books. So you don't want to make it, you don't want to baby them. You don't want to make it real easy for them, you know, because they'll take, they're smarter than you think. They'll take advantage of it. I remember when Walt was young, we were out of town. He usually told on himself when we would get back as to, you know, what had happened. But he was over, I think he was in the, maybe the 7th grade, I don't remember. He's always liked food. So he had this lunch that had been put, I think it was a snack that had been put in the coach's lounge area. And he was at PE. And he couldn't find the coach, and I don't know where the egg was. And he knew his snack was behind this door with the glass pane on it, you know. And he wanted that food real bad, so he saw this bat over here, and he just picked it up and cracked that window. He was not perfect, still isn't, and neither am I. But he wanted to get to that food, and he did not tell us. And so then when I got home, I went to the school on Monday or something, and the teacher said, well, did Walt tell you that we had a little issue with him on Friday? And I went, no, that's not like him. He always tells on himself. So when I went to approach Walt and talk to him about it, I said, Walt, what in the world? Did you think you were going to get away with it? He said, yeah. I said, because I have Down syndrome. And I said, well, let me tell you something. Down syndrome or no Down syndrome, you're going to be paying for that window out of your allowance, and you are not to ever pick up a bat. He said, well, I thought I was going to get away with it because I have Down syndrome. And I went, no, absolutely not. Another thing, it's important to have the high expectations. Not too high, but all of us are going to go up on the bar. You know, if we have low expectations for ourselves or for any of our kids or anything, then they might just get to that low part. If you have higher expectations, not that you're going to put so much pressure on them that they have a nervous breakdown, but that you help them reach some higher goals. Be consistent. They need routine. Kids with special needs, all people really do. Everybody does better with routine, but special needs kids really do like a routine. They want to, you know, they like a schedule. They all have different IQs like we do. So some of them are higher functioning than the others. All of us in this room have different IQs. And so we can't ever think, well, they've all got this low IQ or they can't do this. And they might have a lower IQ, but they might really be a good artist, or Walt's got a fabulous memory. So if I need to remember something, I tell him, so he can remind me what it is, you know. But it's just important to work with the parents so that you can help the child be the best that they can be. Any questions? I know I've said a lot and talked fast.
This is a quiet group.
This is a quiet group. Well, let me ask y'all a question. Are you in special ed, or are you gonna be teachers, or is this just a class that you decided to take, and or some of you are in education? Is everybody in education?
Yes.
That'd be nice. Not everybody. Do you know?
That picture of Walt.
Oh, okay.
That's Walt also in that picture right there. That's Mr. Walt. I'm sure some of you guys